Ethan Carter had been traveling through the far edges of the galaxy for weeks. His mission was simple: check the research outposts and make sure everything was running smoothly. He had worked on many planets and moons before, but nothing had prepared him for this small, wild moon. It was a strange place with purple skies and glowing plants. The wind howled at night, and strange creatures called out in the dark. Ethan liked exploring, but he was careful. One morning, while checking the shuttle's systems, Ethan's craft hit a patch of sudden turbulence. The shuttle shook violently, alarms screamed, and he tried to steady it. But it was too late. The shuttle crashed into the rocky ground with a deafening thud. Ethan struggled to get out. Smoke and sparks flew everywhere. His suit was damaged, and he had a few cuts, but he was alive. He looked around. The landscape was empty except for the strange plants and rocks. He knew he needed shelter, or he might not survive the night. As Ethan was looking for a safe place, he noticed a small figure hiding behind a large glowing fern. It was a little girl. Her skin was a soft shade of green, and her large eyes shined in the dim light. She looked scared. Ethan held up his hands to show he meant no harm. He moved slowly, talking in calm tones. "Hey, it's okay. I won't hurt you." The girl flinched, but did not run. She had a small wound on her arm, probably from the crash or the wild terrain. Ethan grabbed his med kit and gently cleaned it. She let him work, her eyes wide but trusting. He smiled softly. "There, all better. I'm Ethan. What's your name?" The girl whispered something in a language Ethan did not understand. He just nodded. "I can't say that, but I will call you Lyra. Is that okay?" She blinked at him and nodded slowly. From that moment, a small bond began between them. The days passed, and Ethan and Lyra stayed close. He built a small shelter from broken shuttle parts and local materials. The nights were cold, and strange noises echoed through the land, but Ethan made sure Lyra was safe and warm. He taught her some English words, and she repeated them with a soft, melodic voice. "Water, food, safe, Father," she said one day, looking at him. Ethan froze. "Father? That's not exactly right, but I think I understand what you mean. I'll protect you, Lyra, I promise." Lyra smiled, a small, bright smile that made Ethan feel a warmth he had not known in years. He had always been alone in his travels. Meeting her changed that. She was tiny and fragile, but brave. She tried to climb rocks and run in the fields, and Ethan always followed, ready to catch her if she fell. One afternoon, Ethan noticed shadows moving in the distance. Large, graceful creatures came closer. They were Avari, tall beings with shimmering skin and elegant movements. They were Lyra's people. Ethan froze, unsure if he should run or explain. Lyra ran to them, speaking quickly in her own language. The creatures looked at Ethan with suspicion. The leader, a tall Avari male, stepped forward and spoke, his voice deep but calm. Ethan held up his hands. "I mean no harm. I was protecting her. That's all." The Avari guard studied him. Lyra clutched his hand. "Father," she said softly again, and it seemed to confuse the Avari. They whispered among themselves, their expressions a mix of surprise and concern. After a long pause, they nodded and told Ethan he could not stay. He would have to leave, and they would take Lyra back to the capital. Ethan felt a pang of sadness. He had grown attached to this little alien girl. She had saved him in a way he did not expect. Protecting her had given him a purpose. The Avari lifted Lyra gently and began moving back toward their city. Ethan followed at a distance, making sure she was safe. He noticed how delicate and careful they were with her, but he also knew that she had formed a bond with him that could not be broken easily. Lyra looked back at Ethan, eyes wide, as if asking him to stay. He waved gently, his heart heavy. At the edge of the forest, the Avari stopped. Lyra reached out to Ethan. "Father, stay." Come with me?" she asked in a small voice. Ethan shook his head gently. "I can't, Lyra, but I'll find a way back to see you. I promise." The Avari nodded, and with a swirl of light, they lifted Lyra and disappeared into the distance. Ethan stood alone for a moment, feeling the wind on his face and the emptiness around him. Then he started walking back to the wrecked shuttle. He knew he had survived the crash for a reason. Lyra had changed him. He had learned to care for someone other than himself. That night, Ethan sat outside the shelter he had built and looked at the stars. He thought about Lyra, about the strange bond they shared, and about the alien queen who would one day hear that her daughter called a human father. The thought made him smile softly. He knew his journey was just beginning. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, but for the first time, he had someone to protect, someone who needed him. And he would not fail her. Ethan closed his eyes and whispered to the stars, "I will see you again, Lyra. I promise." The wind rustled through the glowing plants, and for the first time on this wild moon, he felt at home, even in the middle of the unknown. The bond he had formed in such a short time was stronger than anything he had ever known. And though the Queen and her people might not understand, Ethan knew that some connections went beyond species, beyond language, and beyond reason. They were real, and they were powerful. He lay down in the small shelter, keeping one hand on the med kit and one hand remembering Lyra's small hand in his. Sleep came slowly, but it came. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But for now, he held on to the memory of her smile, her trust, and the tiny word that had changed everything. Father. And in the vast silence of the moon, Ethan knew that this was only the beginning of an extraordinary story. The next morning, Ethan woke to the sound of strange wings and the soft glow of the alien sun. He knew today would be different. Lyra had been taken back to the Avari city, but the memory of her small hand in his kept him moving. He packed what he could from the wrecked shuttle and began the long trek toward the city, hoping he could find a way to see her again. The path was not easy. Strange creatures lurked in the shadows, and the plants sometimes seemed to reach for him. But Ethan was careful. He remembered how he had helped Lyra, and he used all his knowledge of survival to navigate the terrain. Hours passed, and the city appeared on the horizon. It was unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. Towering structures shimmered in soft light, and the streets were filled with Avari moving with grace and purpose. As he approached, guards stopped him. Their eyes were sharp, and their posture was rigid. Ethan raised his hands and spoke calmly. "I am not here to fight. I just want to see Lyra. She called me father." The guards exchanged glances. One of them nodded and led him through a corridor of strange, glowing walls. Finally, he was brought before the Queen herself. Queen Saraline was taller than Ethan expected. Her skin shimmered with a soft silver light, and her eyes were deep pools that seemed to see everything. She studied him carefully. "Why does my daughter call you father?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. Ethan swallowed. He had not expected this. "Your daughter was hurt and scared," Ethan began. "I only protected her. I helped her, cared for her, and kept her safe. She called me father because she trusted me. That is all." Queen Saraline looked at him closely. Her expression softened slightly, but the surprise in her eyes was clear. No human had ever come close to her daughter before. Lyra appeared then, running toward Ethan. She stopped in front of him, her small body shaking with excitement. "Father!" she cried, wrapping her arms around him. Ethan knelt down and held her gently. "Hey, Lyra, I am here. I am safe," he whispered. Queen Saraline watched silently, still unsure of what this bond meant. The Queen asked her advisors to explain what had happened. They examined Lyra and confirmed that she had formed a deep emotional bond with Ethan during their time together. It was unusual, even unprecedented. The Queen struggled to understand. How could a human, so fragile compared to her people, become so important to her daughter? Ethan was asked to stay temporarily in the palace to help Lyra adjust. At first, he was nervous. Everything was so different. The halls were tall and shiny, the air smelled strange but clean, and the sounds of the city filled the rooms. But Ethan focused on Lyra. She needed him, and he was determined not to let her down. During his stay, he taught Lyra simple English words. She repeated them with excitement, laughing when she got them right. Ethan also learned more about Avarii culture. He saw their respect for nature, their careful movements, and their advanced technology. He realized that even though they seemed delicate, they were strong and intelligent in ways humans were not. Lyra would not sleep without Ethan nearby. He told her stories of Earth, of oceans, forests, and mountains. She listened, wide-eyed, fascinated by his words. Ethan smiled each time she said, "Father, tell again." He had never thought of himself as a storyteller, but now he spoke from his heart. These moments, small as they were, created a bond that could not be broken by distance or difference. The Queen began to observe them from a distance. She saw Ethan's patience, his kindness, and his bravery in small actions. He was careful with Lyra, never raising his voice, always gentle, always protective. The Queen started to wonder if humans might not be as weak as she had assumed. If one human could care for her daughter in this way, what else might they be capable of? One day, an advisor whispered that some members of the court were unhappy with Ethan's presence. They believed that a human should not influence the princess. The Queen frowned, knowing this could create trouble, but she also saw the joy and safety in Lyra's eyes. She decided that for now, Ethan could stay. He had proven himself, and the bond with her daughter could not be ignored. Lyra ran through the palace gardens with Ethan following. She laughed as she tried to climb trees, and he gently caught her each time she slipped. "Father, look! I can reach the sky!" she shouted. Ethan laughed with her. "Not yet, Lyra, but you're getting close." They played for hours, and the Queen watched from a balcony. Slowly, her suspicions softened into curiosity and a quiet respect. At night, when the city was quiet, Ethan sat by Lyra's side and looked at the stars. He told her about the stars he had seen on his travels and the planets he had visited. Lyra listened quietly, her head resting on his shoulder. Ethan felt a deep sense of purpose. He had always traveled alone, but now he had someone depending on him, someone who trusted him completely. The palace guards began to respect him as well. They saw how Ethan cared for Lyra and how he handled himself in the alien city. They were still cautious, but they could not deny that he had proven his worth. Some even began to treat him with a nod of approval when they passed. Ethan also noticed that the Queen watched him more often. Sometimes, she would quietly observe him in the gardens or during meals. Her expression was difficult to read. Ethan could not tell if she approved, disapproved, or simply did not know what to think. But he knew that Lyra's happiness and safety were what mattered most. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between Ethan and Lyra grew stronger. He learned the Avarii ways and taught Lyra some human games. They laughed, explored, and shared stories. Even the Queen had to admit that this human was different. He was not just a protector, he was a father figure, a teacher, and a friend. One afternoon, as they walked through the gardens, Lyra asked Ethan a question. "Father, will you always stay with me?" Ethan looked at her small, hopeful eyes. He smiled softly. "I will do my best, Lyra. No matter what happens, I will protect you." The Queen watched quietly from a distance, feeling a strange mixture of pride, confusion, and worry. She had never imagined that a human could have such an impact on her daughter. That night, as the city slept, Ethan lay awake thinking. He knew danger could come from within the palace. Not everyone would accept him, and some might try to remove him. But he did not care. Lyra needed him, and he would not leave her side. The bond they shared was stronger than fear, stronger than tradition, stronger than anything he had faced before. In the quiet hours, Ethan whispered to the stars, "I will not fail you, Lyra. I will always come back to you." And in that moment, he knew that this was only the beginning of a story that would change both human and Averii lives forever. The Queen might not understand now, but she would learn that some connections are unbreakable, no matter the distance, no matter the difference. Weeks passed in the Avari city, and Ethan had grown accustomed to the strange surroundings. He had learned how to move through the halls without disturbing the delicate lights and how to speak a few words of the Avari language. Lyra was happy, running through the gardens, laughing and calling him father. Her small hand was always in his, and he could feel the trust she had placed in him. The bond they shared was growing stronger each day. Queen Saraline watched them closely. She could not deny the effect Ethan had on her daughter. Lyra's laughter filled the palace, a sound that had been rare before. The queen could feel a strange mix of admiration and worry. A human had entered their lives, and now he had become essential to the princess. She had to understand why. One day, the queen called Ethan to the council room. The room was filled with advisors, scholars, and guards. Ethan stepped in carefully, bowing slightly to show respect. The queen's eyes were fixed on him. "We need to understand this bond," she said. "It is unusual and unprecedented." Ethan nodded. "I understand. I did not plan it. I only wanted to help Lyra. When she called me father, I knew she trusted me. That is all." The scholars examined Lyra, using their technology to study her emotional state. They confirmed that the bond was deep. Lyra's mind had attached to Ethan during the time he protected her. It was not just affection, it was a strong emotional connection that could not be easily broken. The queen listened carefully, trying to absorb the information. She realized that the bond was real, and she could not ignore it. Ethan stayed in the palace, helping Lyra adjust to life back in her city. He taught her more words, explained things from Earth, and played simple games. Lyra learned quickly and enjoyed every moment. She would often run to him, exclaiming, "Father, watch me!" And Ethan would laugh, catching her if she fell. The palace guards started noticing his courage and patience. Some whispered among themselves, acknowledging that he was different from other humans. Despite the peace, Ethan felt tension in the palace. Some Avarii were uncomfortable with his presence. They believed humans could not be trusted and worried that he might influence the princess in the wrong way. Ethan was aware of this, but he never acted with fear. He continued to focus on Lyra, knowing that protecting her was his first duty. One afternoon, Lyra asked Ethan a question. "Father, why do they not like you?" Ethan looked at her small face, worried. "Some are afraid of humans, Lyra. They do not understand me, but they will learn with time. What matters is that I will always protect you." The queen observed quietly as Ethan reassured Lyra. She realized that his actions spoke louder than words. His presence brought calm to her daughter and safety to the palace. Slowly, she began to trust him, though she did not say it aloud. She could see how Lyra depended on him, and she could not take that away. One evening, the city was quiet, but Ethan noticed shadows moving near the palace gates. He alerted the guards. They looked tense, and the queen appeared quickly. "What is it?" she asked. Ethan pointed to the shadows. "Some may be planning trouble. We must be careful." The queen nodded, realizing that the palace could be under threat from within. The next morning, chaos erupted. A faction inside the court tried to remove Ethan from the palace. They claimed he was influencing the princess and threatening the queen's authority. Guards moved to confront them, but the attackers were skilled and strong. Ethan stood in front of Lyra, blocking her from harm. He took blows, dodged attacks, and shielded her as best he could. Queen Caroline arrived just in time. She saw Ethan standing firm, defending her daughter against armed attackers. His determination and bravery were clear. The queen called out, and palace soldiers rallied to his side. Together, they pushed the attackers back. Lyra ran to Ethan's side, holding his hand tightly. Ethan had protected her once again, even risking his own life. After the attack, the queen spoke to Ethan privately. "You risked everything for my daughter. Humans are not as fragile as I believed. I see now that your bond with her is real. I cannot ignore it." Ethan nodded, exhausted but relieved. "I only want to keep her safe. That is all I can do." The palace began to change slowly. Some Avari who had been skeptical of Ethan began to respect him. They saw his courage, his kindness, and his patience with Lyra. Even the scholars who had doubted the bond began to accept it as something extraordinary. Lyra's laughter filled the halls, and the city felt lighter, safer, and happier. One night, Ethan sat with Lyra under the stars. The air was cool, and the glow of the city lights reflected in her eyes. "Father, will they let you stay?" she asked softly. Ethan held her hand. "I hope so, Lyra. I will do everything I can to stay with you." Lyra smiled and leaned against him, trusting that he would keep his promise. Queen Caroline watched from a distance, quietly observing the bond between them. She realized that sometimes love and protection could cross species, cultures, and expectations. Ethan had shown her daughter what true courage and care looked like, and she could not deny its value. She began to accept that humans might be stronger than she had assumed. Days turned into weeks, and life continued in the palace. Ethan and Lyra explored the gardens, played games, and shared stories. He taught her about Earth, and she taught him about the Avari way of life. The bond between them became unbreakable. The queen could see that her daughter was happy, and that mattered most. One afternoon, Lyra asked, "Father, will you always be with me?" Ethan looked at her tiny, hopeful eyes. "I will always protect you, Lyra. I promise." The queen overheard, her heart softening. She realized that this bond, unexpected as it was, had brought joy and safety to her daughter. Ethan lay awake that night, thinking of the days ahead. He knew challenges would come, but he was ready. Lyra depended on him, and he would not fail her. The bond they shared was powerful, unbreakable, and full of hope. And as he watched the stars from the palace window, he whispered, "I will not leave you, Lyra. No matter what comes, I will protect you."